Hello everyone, welcome to the new video of React series. Today we are going to discuss about components. It's very interesting topic. Not only components, along with that we are also going to learn what state is, what is props, and at the end of it we are going to do a project. You are all up for that? Alright, so we'll get started. But before that, if you're watching this video, please subscribe to this channel because I keep sharing a lot of great content and getting a lot of good feedback from all of you. So why not subscribing? Alright, without any further delay, let's get into the business. To learn about React components, the knowledge of JSX is very important, and we have seen the JSS. We have done some project with JSS in the last episode of this series, so I'm sure that the picking up components will be much easier for you. So first thing that we want to kind of get started with is what is component, right? What exactly it is that we are talking about, right? That's very important. Now, whenever we are talking about components, there are 5 things that you need to keep it in your mind. Exactly 5 things. Those 5 things are components is a plain old JavaScript function. So if you are familiar with JavaScript functions, it means you will understand component pretty well. And it means that like a function, it can take an argument and it returns something, and of course it performs certain task. So as simple as that. There is nothing really complex around it. Second thing, the function must return something. In case of components, it has to return something. In normal JavaScript function, it works if it doesn't return something. It can actually perform some task but not returning something. But in case of components, it has to return something. That something is always JSX, which we have learned already. Okay, this is the third point, important point. The something is always going to be JSX, which we have learned already. So far, good. JavaScript function JSX Now last 2 points, which we'll be learning in this particular video. Please pay attention to that. The component may have data private to itself. We call it state. It means that if a component is there, in that component we will be handling certain data. It could be user data, it could be pets data, it could be movies data, it can be any data. The data that you handle within that function, the data that you handle within that component is called state. Okay. And the last thing, there are 2 components, they might have to interact each other. So component 1, like user component, has to interact with, say, movie component. Employee component has to interact with department component. For this interaction, you have to exchange data between these 2 components. The way that you exchange data is called props. That's all, guys, about component we'll be learning today. So we'll repeat once quickly. Components are nothing but plain old JavaScript function. Like JavaScript function, it can return something. The something that we return is JSX. The data that is there in the component is called state. And component interact with each other with something called props. As we know these attributes of a component, let's now take a deeper look into what exactly a component is. So, in React, the component means is an isolated unit that can perform its own job. It means that that unit has UI, it has the business logic, and you can actually take that unit and fit it anywhere that you need. Basically, that's what the component is. So if you think from the JSX point of view that we have learned in the last video, is like we had a bunch of HTML that gives a presentation. That HTML was driven by certain data. You remember the pets project we did, it actually driven by the pet data. And then what happened is, like, when the pet data comes in, it actually renders that entire thing on the UI. Now you can actually take that component, that pets component, to anywhere and fit into wherever you need a pet listing, the listing of all your cats, right? So this component is something that is very isolated. It's supposed to do one job and it's supposed to do that job well. It has its own presentation and business logic together, and you can actually fit into anywhere. Now you can actually build a big monolithic fat component, which really not going to solve any purpose, because another reason of having a component is that the reusability. You got to reuse your component somewhere else, and that's why probably you want to create them as a smaller components. So you need to always look for an opportunity, like how can you break a big monolithic component into a smaller one so that you can actually reuse them. If a smaller chunk of this big component functionality is required somewhere else, instead of again taking this big monolithic component and writing lot of if else inside this, just try to break this into smaller chunks and take these smaller chunks elsewhere to do lot of functionalities. So that is what a point that you need to remember always whenever you think in terms of component, whenever you try to design things. We spoke about these components interactions, right, in the last slide. Like we told that there is something called props, there is something called state as a private data. Just take a kind of high level view into how the state and props things are kind of work along with the component, so that I get some understanding. And if you kind of don't understand it yet when I'm going to show you, still okay, don't worry about it, because very soon we will be doing our project, our hands-on project, and while doing the hands-on project everything is gonna be clear. But you can actually start relating this, from now onwards. Now each of these yellow boxes that we are showing here is components, which we have seen in the last slide. Like these yellow boxes are the small components. Now inside these components, each of these blue dots represent state and each of the red dots represent props. What exactly it means? It means this component has its own private data, which is like state, but this component has to interact with another component. It means that interaction is always meant through some data, through some information. It seems that it has to pass some information to this component. This information will be always passed through these props, something called props. This is something you can think as simple as an argument to a function. If a component is a function, this props is an argument to a function, where these blue dot states are something that is within the component which we don't pass across the components. So guys, one thing is pretty important to understand. People when actually explain or speak, there are a lot of jargons they use. There are a lot of things that they use much complex ways. But things at the ground level is very, very simple. Prop states may be very confusing to many people if they are not understood correctly. State are like local variable to a function. You can think about this way, to a component. Props are something that you pass as an argument to another component so that you can actually exchange data. If you just remember this way, the states and props are kind of very, very easy to use. Now, one thing that you are actually noticing, that everything we are passing is kind of top down. It is one directional. It starts from the parent and goes down to child, then goes down to another grandchild, like that. Yes, in case of React, the pattern that we'll be following always is top down. It's from the parent to child. It's unidirectional data flow. That's what we'll be doing always, most of the time. But at some point of time, you might have to notify a parent from the child for certain cases. We'll also cover it in our future video, like how to do this parent to child. Parent to child we'll learn in this video itself. In future video, we'll do like how to do child to parent kind of interaction as well. Also, there could be one component which is completely isolated. This component is not in the hierarchy of this guy or this one or this one. Now, if you want to update this one, there should be a mechanism to update that. We'll be learning that also in our future video when we'll be learning about context. When we'll be learning about better way of state management using Redux or something equivalent. So that's when we'll be learning this kind of state management as well. So, but for now, for this video, what you need to kind of concentrate on state, props, and components. So component is just a JavaScript function which can text and arguments, always return a JSX. It has its private data which is like state. If it has to interact with another component, it will be passing something called props. And that's all you have to remember. That's all you have to focus on for understanding the things I'm going to tell further. Alright, so now what we're going to do, we are going to do our project with understanding of components. Put that theory behind, but try to remember now and then like whatever we have learned, and we'll be kind of accomplishing each and everything that we have learned by doing a simple but again effective project, right? So today's project is about movies. So what we're going to do here is like we are going to kind of build a kind of simple portal which lists down certain movies with its all details and things like that. But while doing that, what we'll be learning is how to understand and make use of components, how to structure components, how to structure data, and how to do stuff with data, right? So what I have here is like same regular React app that we have learned a couple of videos back, and what we have is basically I have removed few unnecessary code, like whatever was inside app.js file. I just remove everything and kept this we learning component. That's what is kind of rendering over here. So what we are going to do as a kind of follow up steps is like we are going to get an array of movies, a list of movies first. And once we get this array of movies, what we're going to do is like we are going to iterate that particular data. You have learned about iteration of data in JSX using map. Do you remember in the last video we have done that? And after that, we are going to kind of take advantage of the data, want to kind of render that and see like how it goes. Now to make everything happen, what we are going to do first is like we are going to create a particular file called movie component. I think that's how we'll be naming it because we're learning component. So let's go ahead and create a file called movie component. Okay, movie component dot js. Now it is not mandatory that you have to always kind of suffix component whenever you are actually creating a component, but I'm doing this just to make you understand as we're in the component class. You can actually name it whatever is is your convention. So we'll go to movie component.js. Movie component.js is blank right now. So first thing that I'm going to do, I am going to copy over data, which is like an array of movies. I have to copy over. I don't want to take much movies. We'll probably take 6 to 7 movies and copy over here. Now first you want to do things a bit ugly way, because you might see things in a bit ugly way in certain situations, or you might start writing things in a bit ugly way in certain situations. So you will start writing in a bit ugly way and try to refactor that to make it in a better way, right? So that's the objective. So let's follow along to do the things in ugly way, and then we will try to refactor it in a better way. So first thing is we are going to get an array of movies. So this is my array of movies. Okay, I'm going to make this maximize so that you can see this fully. So this is my array of movies, which is like a variable. This is an array, and each of the array contains each of the movie information. So let me see how much I have. 6, 7 I have. Okay, this is cool. So I have 7 movie information. Now let's go into one movie information, try to see what are the information available. I have a movie ID, a title, the year it got released, the director, what is the rating of this movie, what is the runtime in terms of, I think, this minutes, and then the image which says the poster of the movie. So very simple that it has. The very next thing that we need to do is like create this component definition. So what we have learned so far is like the component is nothing but a plain JavaScript function, right? And in the initial video we told that like every function that we write in React we'll be writing in the arrow function method. So if you are not very well versed with arrow function, please learn about arrow function, because I told that I'll be using that throughout in my React series. So const, let's give it a name, or function name, say movie component, and it's an arrow function. At this point doesn't take any parameter, so it is blank, and then it is having a function body. Now in function body I told that for this to become a component it has to always return something. So what it has to return a JSX. We know like what JSX is. JSX is nothing but a combination of HTML and JavaScript. HTML part takes care of the presentational part, JavaScript part mostly takes care of the business logic part. So in this return we will be doing something to render each of these movies. Now this is gonna be at its first take, this is gonna be almost similar to the pet project that we have done, where you have done a listing of cats. You remember, right? So let's go ahead and try to make use of this data and try to list down all the movies for us, right? So let's do that. What we'll do, let us create maybe a div which is like will act like a container over here, and then give a class so that we can style it later point of time. And we have already learned like to provide a class in JSX you have to use that keyword called class name. That is very React specific thing. So let's give a class name called movie container. We'll think about styling later, don't worry about it. We'll probably give a heading like maybe a H2, and then give a heading like movies. That should be good. Okay, now we will stop here. This is probably enough to first prove that how component works and how they kind of interact with each other. So I have a simple component. It doesn't do anything at this point of time. Probably it does only thing is like render one h2 called movies, but this is still a component which I can reuse, which I can use somewhere. So let us see how we can use this component, how we can stitch this component so that at least this h2 movies part gets rendered into UI, and after that we'll be able to iterate through movies and start doing all the work that we have planned. Now, for demonstrating that part alone, I want to take you to probably my second or third video topic where I had explained how this create react app things are structured. So let's see that again. If you go to public folder, go to index.html file. In the index.html file, if you come down, scroll down, you will see somewhere in the body there is a div called id root. All right. Now, this is a very important line. If you remove this line, nothing is going to work because I told the React is declarative. It does a lot of things for you. So it is going to find a div in the application with an ID root and going to inject all the components over here, basically the main components over here. Now, what is the main component in Create React app? The main component is defined by index.js file. How it is? Remember this ID equals to root. Now, if I go to index.js file straight away, what I am seeing, it is doing document.getElementId by root, so getting that particular div. Inside that it is actually putting this app component. App is a component. Okay, why it is a component? It is another regular JavaScript function that it runs a JSX. We are importing it here and we are using here, right? So app is here. So what is app? If I go to app very quickly, so what I see here, it is something similar to what I'm creating as a movie component. It's just a function. There's no argument and return a JSX, right? What it is saying here is like we are learning component. So instead of that, what I can do now, I can actually import my movie component over here, isn't it? So let's import movie component, import movie component, and then from dot slash we'll do movie component. Now one thing you need to understand, once you're importing a component, you don't have to give the extension .js. You just need to make sure that all the name and everything is right, when the folder file name and right, then you can import. Now we are importing, but hold on, have we exported this movie component? Because each of the components also act like a module. So it means you have to export the component so that you can import the component somewhere. So this app is exported over here, export default app. That's the reason you are able to import it in the index.js file. Similarly, if you want to import the movie component into your app, you have to export that from the movie component module. So the next thing that we'll be doing is export default movie component. That is this particular function. Now we should be able to import this over here. So we go to app.js straight away, and in the app.js we have already imported this guy. So now what we can do, as we have imported this, we can actually start using this component. So once you made something like a component, the best part is like you can use it just like another JSX, right? So this component now available like a JSX for you to start using. So now try to understand the power. We have created a very regular JavaScript function and we have exported that function. We have imported that function somewhere else. And after importing that, we can actually use it just like a JSX syntax, just like another look like an HTML tag, so that whenever this thing encounters, it actually brings all the code that is there inside that movie components return function. So your entire JSX from movie components come and replace and sit over here. This is the power of it. So now you're seeing like how components can be stitched to each other. So let's see what is the output. What will be the output in this? So movie components return method is having this JSX called just a movies inside a div. So when I run this, it is going to render just something called movies because that's what is going to come here. So we have something called movies. Now what we'll be doing is like, as we know that Create React app supports hot reloading. It means that the moment you change the code, things get refreshed. We can leave it side by side and start doing our coding so that we will be able to see like how things are kind of changing throughout. Let's get back to making our movie app complete, right? So what we'll be doing, we have this H2 movies. The next thing that we'll be doing, we'll have to iterate through that array of movies. So what we'll be doing, we'll be taking an unordered list because that is probably perfect for getting a ULLI for iteration. Let's give a class name so that we can style it later point of time. Let's give maybe movie list as a class name, and then inside this UL we have to do an li. Now each of the list is going to be each of the movies, each of the object in the movie. So it means that we have to iterate through these movies, that this particular array of movies, and then each of the movie will be putting the information inside an li, just like our last project, pet project. Okay, so let's do that. So first thing, do any expression, we know that we need this curly braces. Now for iteration, what we need? For iteration, we need something called a map. So we'll be doing like movies.map, and this is again must be an arrow function. So we'll take out each of the movie. It is iterating, so this is each of the movie. And then for each of the movie that we are doing, the next thing that we have to do is like we have to write the code which will be like inside this. So this is the structure, movies.map. It will give you each of the movie. Now for each of the movie, whatever you want to do, that you have to write over here. What we are going to do for each of the movie, we are going to create one of the list item. Let's give the list item a class name again, say movie. And then what we'll be doing is like we'll be now start putting all the information. So what are the information we have? We have a title, year, director, rating, runtime, poster, that kind of thing. So let us start rendering things. Maybe first thing we'll be doing is like we'll put a poster at the top, like so you'll have a image, and then we have an image src, and in the src what we can do, each of the movie is having now each of this object from here to here. So if each of the movie having each of these objects, it means if I do movie.poster, I'll get this image path. So let me go and do these things. Let me do movie.poster. Now one thing I have missed here, do you guess what exactly? If you forgot, you can actually take back the last video. Now I am iterating through, right, this list. Now what we have learned in the last video is like whenever you are doing an iteration, basically list, you have to tell very explicitly what is the key, right? You have to specify a key for this particular list item so that when React re-renders, it understand like what is the particular list among all the list item I have to basically refresh. So what you can do here, you can actually give a key, and then you can make keys with something unique. Now if I see in the movie object, I have ID which is unique, which is like changing. So I can always do movie.id. This is very important. Okay, so if I refresh my page now, what I'm going to see, I'm going to see poster of all the 7 movies coming here. All the details I have not checked, so I won't be seeing. So let's see this far. Of course I have to complete, I see this error because I have not completed this image tag. So let me complete this image tag. I will also give an ALT just to make the accessibility better. So movie.title, and then close this image tag. Let me save now and let's see what happens. You see we have all the posters of the movies rendered over here. This is what we have coded so far, and this is exactly we have got so far. This is cool. This is so far very cool. Now what we can do is like we can bring rest of the information easily, and then start rendering rest of the information for each of these movies because those information is there in the object. So let's do that. We will keep coding inside this li because we want to get the rest of the information over here. So the next thing probably can do is a paragraph tag, and inside paragraph we can do something like movie dot title by the director name, basically movie dot director. Then we can say like was released on, we have the year, you remember, so we'll do like movie dot year. So this is going to give me a few more information, like this is the title of the movie by this director. So you see here the matrix by this director was released on, so was needs a space, of course, was released on 1999, right? So that is we have done. And now it also has something called rating. So let us go ahead and put the rating information as well. So we will do like P, and then we'll do like say rating, and we can do like say movie dot rating. So we also have the rating information as well. So this is like pretty cool thing that what we are doing over here. We have done the rating, we have done the director, we have done everything. So this is kind of going to list out over here. That is our movie app, complete movie app. So we have movie poster, we have made use of the information, and we have what you have done is like we have also printed the rating. So our movie app is basically working. There's no use of it, and we are using this movie component by exporting it from here and importing it over here. So everything works pretty well. Now next thing that I just wanted to call out is like this is probably not the very right way of doing. So in the last JSX class we have done the pet shop or the pet thing in this way, but this is not really right way. Your data should never reside in your component in this way, because this data you might want to use somewhere else, and you are losing the opportunity by putting this data inside this component in this way. Now what can you do then in that case? So what you can do is like don't keep your data part over here. Instead of that, take out this data part completely and put into a file separately, so that you can actually make use of this data in much better way. So I have just deleted the data from here. What I am going to do, I am going to create, there is a folder called data already. I have created probably some time back. It is empty. So inside that, let's create movies.js file. And in this movies.js file, let's put this data. So I have put this data over here. Now this data is over here. So it means that if I import this movies.js file in some component, I should be able to get access to this data. So now this data can be used beyond just movie component. It can be used somewhere else as well if I want to. Now in this way, straight away it won't work, because to import this movies data into another component, I have to export it. So to export it, what you need to do, you can just do export the keyword, just similar to the export that we have seen. So I am exporting this guy. Now what I can do is like I can straight away come to my movie component and do little bit of refactoring, or first good refactoring that we can do. I can first import. Okay, so let's import. I can import movies from folder name data / movies.js. Now this movies is available to this component. Similarly, if you want to make it available to another component, you can import in this way. Now this is again, this import is not same as default import, because while exporting movies I have not used the thing called export default. So please learn about module import export if you're very new to it, because it's a very strong concept that we need to kind of use right everywhere. Okay, great. So these movies are there. So it means that if I am now refreshing my screen, things should straightway work, because these movies I am importing, and this is the same variable I was using before also. So nothing changes, but one great thing happened. Data doesn't reside in this component anymore. What I see is like there's no change. Everything works perfectly. Now my second level of refactoring that I am going to do now. The second level of refactoring is usually in a bigger application, the real life application, you may not get this movies data cooked up from a JS file which is like residing locally. Usually you will get this movies data by making a network call, by making an API call, and things like that. So what would be best is like, from now on, as in the future videos, we'll see like how to make the APIs call. We might want to extend the same project to make the API call. Let's have a practice of creating a function to get this data. So we'll do a very dummy function called say fetch movie data, and we'll create a simple function which return basically movies. This is the same movies that it returns. Okay, and instead of using these movies over here directly, what we can do over here, const movie data equals to fetch movie data, and then instead of movies, let's use this movie data over here. Now what are you doing all these things? Our things were working very well. The only reason we are doing, because it is organically we are coding. So it means tomorrow I am just going to remove this guy from here. I might make that API call from this function, and rest of the code I don't have to change at all. You're getting the point? Rest of the code I don't have to change at all. So whatever happening this inside this function, as long as it is returning a list of movies that my JSX understand, everything is fine. So I'm just trying to do this coding organically. So tomorrow when I'm going to use things like use effect and try to reuse some of these functions and all, you will see like it is moving that way. So things are exactly same. Fetch movie data instead of movies directly over here. I'm taking it's a kind of abstraction that I have created, and now it returns a movies data. Now if I save, things is going to work as it is. There is no change in the expectation. Okay, there's something failed because I goof off something over here. Of course, I was trying to write an arrow function, but I didn't write it as an arrow function. That's the reason. Neither I wrote it as a normal function because I have not given the function keyword. So now it is going to work. Okay, so things are fine. Now things are working and everything is great. Now the next thing that we are going to do, the last thing, our last refactoring that we are going to do is we are thinking like, this particular part, this li to this li can go to another component. It can very well reside inside another component. Just because maybe another component, if they want to make use of similar kind of listing, passing the movie data just like this, they can actually use it. So for that, they don't have to take that entire component or movie component and then use it somewhere. This is where what we are going to learn is the concept of props. So we'll be kind of refactoring that. But before that, I want to kind of call it out is like this movies data that we are actually dealing with inside this component is very private to this particular component when it is inside this component, right? Now if I am changing this movies data to something else, maybe I am adding one more movies over here inside this component, that is not available to outside component. Outside components available only this list, which is like having 7 movies. But inside this, if I am adding one more movie, the 8th movie is not available outside of this component. So it means this movie data that I am dealing with right now is the state of this particular component. So this is what is state about, right? Future, just next video, we are going to learn about the hooks called use state and use effect. We'll be talking much more deeper about the state, but understand the state concept of a component. This particular data I can change within the component. I am actually changing the state of the component, which is not at all available outside of the component unless I am passing this data as a props to another component. I have a list of movies data which is coming from outside, but that is what is not going to change at all. Okay, so as we understand the concept of state, let's understand the concept of props, because what I'm going to do, I'm going to pass this movie data to another component where I'll be handling this listing. Okay, so for doing that, let us go ahead and create a new component file under src. Let's create a new file and name it as movie.js. Okay, and what we are going to do on the movie.js is we are going to do the coding of that listing. Now to code this listing, what are the details it is required? To code that listing, the details it's required is it required this image, basically ID, title, poster, director, rating. It required all these details, right? So it means I have to pass all these details to the movie component, so that movie component will be able to render these details over here. And then how my movie component, this particular movie component is going to work out, let's see. Let's code this one first. So this is another component, means I'll create it as a function. So const movie, and what we are expecting over here, we are expecting one argument, because I told that we'll be passing it as a props. So it means I'm expecting a movie object over here, and then after taking this movie object, I can do a lot of stuff inside this, but ultimately I have to return a JSX. Okay, so I have to return a JSX. Now the first thing that I can do over here, how I can refactor, first thing that I can do, I can just take this li to li straight away from here, just cut it, come to movie.js and put this guy over here. Now, in the ideal practice, you won't first write the code in a bit ugly way and then refactor. You will start writing the code in a better way, but just for making you understand, we have doing it like a bit ugly way and then try to refactoring it. So I have taken the whole listing logic in the movie component. I can name it as a movie list also, if it sounds confusing to you. And then what I can do an export default of movie, of course. And then what I can do over here, coming to my movie component.js, I can actually import this guy. So coming to movie component.js, I can do like import movie from /movie. That's how we have learned, like how to import one component to another. As we have imported, I can use this as a JSX, just replacing all my LIs from here and kind of use it. Okay, but one thing to again note here is like things are not complete. Why things are not complete here? Because this movie component is expecting a movie details. So it means from here, whenever I'm using this movie, I have to pass this movie details as a props. How do you pass? It's just like another attribute. So do movie equals to, you pass each of this movie. So see this syntax. This movie is nothing but this iterated value, and this is one attribute, a property I have added to this particular component. As I have added this property, the same name that I am using over here with object destructuring. Okay, so object destructuring, if you're new, I have created a video of object destructuring. Please read about it, because that's how we'll be using most of the syntax. Otherwise, what you have to do, you have to take an argument like say abcd or props, whatever name, and after coming inside you have to do props.movies to get the movies. Instead of doing that, the most shorthand we can use is like we can get this object directly as a destructuring over here. So I have got this movie object over here. Now if I go over here, let's see what we have done. For each of this iteration of movie, I am calling this component, passing this data. I will be facing the same problem of key. So what I have to do, as it is still a list inside this it is still a list, this li. So I have to actually give a key so that I don't get the warning from React saying that, hey boss, you didn't give a key, I don't know which one to re-render. So I'm going to do similarly what we have done first is like movie.id. Okay, so far so good, we are good so far. So I've saved the file and I see the same thing is working, but I have refactored the code in a great way. In a sense, is like this component is completely isolated, and now I can actually use this component wherever I want. It just need a movie object to be passed and it will just work beautifully. So this is how you kind of restructure your component. This is how component interact with each other. Movie component is interacting with movie through this particular props. Movie component is having its own data in this movie data, which is its state. Again, this is the difference between a state and a props, and it has a parent and child relationship. Movie component is the parent component because it uses this movie stuff as a child, and the parent and child is interacting through these props that I am passing over here. As simple as that. Okay, so the last thing that we want to do is make this app look and feel a little better, because we want to do some styling, isn't it? So the last part of the video, what we're going to see, we're going to see the styling of this particular app that we have created, this movie listing app. We want to make it look better. What I'm showing here is like I have created a CSS file called movies.css under src folder. This is blank right now, of course, and then this movie.css folder file I'm using in the movie component.js file, which is our main component. I'm just importing this movies.css. So it means that any CSS style that I'm going to write here is going to reflect in this particular movie component and its children. So the first thing first, we are going to understand how exactly the DOM structure, so that you can start styling. So let's look into the DOM structure. The first thing that shows here is the div with a class called movie container. Then there is a h2 with the text of movies, and after that there is a ul. Ul is having a class called movie list, and then the li, each of the li's are having this movie as a class. So we have these classes available with us to start styling, right? So let's get started. The first thing that we want to do is styling this movie container. Inside movie container we have this h2 and this ul, these two, and we want to kind of arrange them in a column fashion. At the top is the movies and then all the list coming together, right? So what we can do is like dot movie hyphen container, we'll do display flex, and by default the flex direction is row, so we have to actually say we arrange it in the column, so that what happens is like first there is a movies, and then this particular movie list get organized. So this is now working. Now the next thing that we want to do over here is these movies we want to kind of look it like little bit bigger, and this is h2 under movie container. So let's take movie container once again. So guys, whenever you are styling, please keep this elements this panel open, so that you can see the hierarchy and start doing the styling. It is very intuitive in that way. So we are taking all the h2s inside movie container and then style them, make a little bigger font size, just make it like 2.5 rem. I guess that should do. It is going to make the font size a little bit bigger. Yeah, it is bigger now, right? Okay, now the movie list is collection of all the movie, first movie, second movie, third movie, fourth movie, and we want to organize them in a row, like side by side, right? And also want to make them like responsive. So you are seeing in the mobile, they should automatically come and fit. You're seeing in a bigger screen, they should kind of stretch out appropriately. So let's go ahead and start doing the style of movie list. And inside movie list, what we'll be doing is like we'll be doing display flex. First thing we are going to do, flex direction is by default row, so we are not going to change that. Let it be there. And then we can do is like we can do a flex wrap. Say that do a wrap. I think the value is wrap. Sometimes it's a bit difficult to remember all the values, and also you can always like Google and try to figure it out like what's the right value. And you see like it started kind of appearing row by row. It's still not looking that great. It will look eventually. So the next thing you can do is like let's do this align content. I guess align content, make it like center, and then you can do like justify content and do like center. So you guys, if you are new to this flex, please go ahead and read about it. There are plenty of articles and videos are already available. You can actually get familiar with each of these values correctly. Okay, after that we can give some padding so that it looks a little bit better, or let's not give any padding for now. Let's see what exactly happened. So I've just saved it. I know what you're thinking, that things are still showing as column, but I just now told that by default it will be row. Why it is column? No, it is because you are in a smaller resolution where things are not fitting in a row, so it is coming as column. Let's do this thing. I will select this and try to drag this left. Just see the magic. See what is happening. It is getting arranged in a row, right, wherever the position is there. So that's the best thing. Like it's responsive. It is actually working based on the resolution correctly. Let us get back so that you can see the rest of the code as well. So next thing that we're going to do is like we'll be styling this movie part, and styling this movie part means each of this individual movie, the poster, then comes this one, then this one, so that things kind of start getting aligned perfectly, and you actually able to see, use it properly. So let's go ahead and do like dot movie, and in the dot movie, what we're going to do, we're first going to give some margin, so that things won't get stick one to another. Then what we're going to do is like we're going to give some kind of padding, so that there is some padding between them. There is some kind of space between each of these things. Okay, my favorite thing is like let's give a border, so that we can give a clear differentiation between all of them. So 1 pixel, say solid, and what is the name, maybe some kind of blackish color that we are going to give. And then what we can give is we can give a border radius, so that it looks a little bit curvy. 5 pixels should do. Border radius, yeah, 5 pixels should do. And then what I can do is like we can do this as it is in the flex layout, we can justify the content and align the content again in the center. So you can do a display flex for each of this thing. So display flex x to justify content center, and then align items center. Okay, and the last thing that we want to do, we want each of these details to be in the column fashion, not in the row fashion. So first is the image, then this thing. So we'll do a flex direction of column. So let's see our styles reflects so far with all these changes. I think it looks pretty neat now with all these changes. Let's maximize this one a bit and close this guy and see, like, it looks pretty neat. You see this? It's properly, everything is aligned, everything is so sweet, so good. So I think this style also worked out. So this is the entire code for entire styling. I think it is just based on flex and all the stuff. I have properly organized things. So I hope that you appreciate and you learn like how to do this styling. Again, please go ahead and learn about flex, grid, and all this concept, because these are going to be very handy when you work on the project. So that's it about it. You understood components, you understood state, you understood props. I think it's time to revisit our earlier 5 points once more before we end it, right? Here are those 5 points again. We understood that component is a plain old JavaScript function, that function that returns something, that returns a JSX. The component has its private data state, which it doesn't share with other component. If it has to share something with other component, it's shared in terms of props. So great learning, folks. Do you want to know what's next? What we're going to do next in the next video? Okay, let's learn that now. So, did you like that? I'm sure you will, right? So I hope you enjoyed, watching this video, trying this hands-on and making that app. All right. So this is just the beginning. You know what is next? Next, we are going to talk about two very important React hooks. We are going to talk about use state and use effect. We are going to get very much deep into it, try to understand all the use cases around that, and that is going to make us really solid in understanding React and entire ecosystem. All right. So before we get into much about all of the standard hooks, right, custom hooks, let's learn about these two basic fundamental hooks: use state and use effect. Please take care of yourself and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. I'll see you at the other side. Thank you.